Hey, what is up, top 1% recruiters? In today's episode, we're going to talk about the 6 different career tracks that you can take as a recruiter. There are actually 6 different paths that you can have, and they're all unique and different and all resemble different types of experiences, but it all involves talent acquisition. And if you stick around to the next episode, I'm going to share with you about the 6 core professions within those career tracks. But I want to lay out the foundation of what does a recruiting career track look like for somebody that's just getting into recruiting, or maybe somebody that's thinking about it, or even if you're a seasoned recruiter. We're going to go down memory lane. You're going to sit here and actually share in some of the experiences along the way. What I get kind of sick and tired about is hearing about how sales is king, and all you hear about there on videos is sales, sales, sales. But I would beg to differ just slightly, because recruiting locks hand in hand with the sales organization. You can have sales that brings in potential revenue, but at the end of the day, recruiting is what drives the revenue. And we're all recruiters. Whether you think about it or not, recruiting is very much part of our nature, just like sales is, and just like marketing, and just like branding is. And so we're going to talk, though, specifically, if this is a profession, if this is a career that you are part of, we're going to share. And maybe you're thinking about maybe pivoting. Maybe you're stuck in one career track that's not appealing anymore. You're burnt out. Then this is the episode for you to have a great foundation and awareness of all the pros and the cons between the 6 different career tracks. Okay, so we're going to get into these 6 different career tracks. And before we kind of get into it, I want to preface this by saying that I have nearly 30 years of professional recruiting talent acquisition experience. So each one of these 6 career tracks, I have actually been down that path and have been successful in all 6 of them. I have deep experiences with all of these 6 different career tracks. So I'm going to give you some insight, some knowledge here, some really subject matter expertise knowledge on what these 6 different career tracks look like and what's appealing about them and what are the benefits, where are the opportunities, and what sucks about them, to be honest with you, because there's a lot of them that do suck, and there's a lot of them that takes a lot of hard work. So as we get into this, I just wanted to preface this, and I'm going to share my personal experience, my professional experiences with each and every one of these, just to give you, again, a little bit more context. So with that said, let's dig into the first one. The first one that I want to dig into, when we think about recruiting, and you as a recruiter, you know this, whenever you tell anybody, you say, hey, what do you do for a living, or what do you do for work? And you say, I'm a recruiter. What's the first thing they say? Oh, you're a headhunter. And you're like, yeah, I guess, and so sometimes you just don't even want to begin to actually explain what is it that you do, because there's so many different things that you do within recruiting. But the reality is that anybody that's not within talent acquisition, that's not in our industry, they look at you as a headhunter. They look at you as somebody that hires somebody and gets a commission off of it, kind of like a salesperson. And nothing can be further than the truth than going down that career path and being a recruiter in a staffing agency, right? It's a staffing agency, a headhunting firm, a consulting firm that specializes in staffing. And the truth of the matter is that a lot of those recruiters are base and commission focused. And that's okay, because what really happens if you're a recruiter and you've been around for a while, a lot of recruiters actually get their start working for a staffing firm, working for an agency. And that's what I did. I worked for one of the best staffing agencies, I think, in the planet, which was, back then it was Aerotech, and now is Tech Systems. They've been around for decades, and actually was owned by Steve Bisciotti, the owner of the Baltimore Ravens. And so what was great about this institution that continues to exist today is that they develop a systematic process where they brought in young talent from college and brought them in and really trained them up, developed their core skills as a recruiter so that they can go out there and really hustle for business and beat out the competition. And that's really the state of what staffing agencies is all about. Working for a staffing agency is about hustling. It's about having a sense of urgency. It's about rolling up your sleeves and putting in the grind, putting in the time to get at least a solid year, a foundation of recruiting. because recruiting is really a on-the-job type of experience. In order to really get that strong sort of foundation and really to kind of get that thick layer of skin that we recruiters have, you have to go through a lot of trials. You have to go through a lot of ups and downs, a lot of disappointments, but at the same time, you get a lot of wins, a lot of victories. There's a lot of celebrations. And it also takes a lot of teamwork in order to make an agency work. And one of the reasons why it does, and there's a lot of different roles within an agency, and we'll talk about that in the next episode when we talk about the 6 different roles within talent acquisition, within recruiting. But within staffing agency, you can have boutique staffing firms. They can be small mom and pop consulting firms that maybe has a few recruiters, and you're just out drumming business out there, and you get a lead, you get an opportunity to fill a position, and you do a perm placement, maybe you do a contract to hire, or a straight contract type of position. That is called kind of a boutique sort of small firm. But then you can kind of get to the mid-sized firms, and maybe you have a large office, a few different brick and mortar offices around, and so now you're having dozens of recruiters. You have account managers. Account managers work directly with the clients. You have all the tools in place. You have a systematic process on how things get done, and you might even have name recognition. And then finally, you get to the large organizations. You're talking about national companies, staffing agency companies like Randstads of the world, Tech Systems of the world, and there's quite a few other ones like Robert Half. There's those types of organizations out there, and those are going to be much larger. They can be in the hundreds or thousands. And so what's really awesome about that is that you're able to, as an organization, as recruiters, able to share resources within those networks. And it's brand recognition. And so clients that are big business clients, that are large organizations, they have a lot of comfort and confidence in working with some of the more established companies out there. So it's usually some of the smaller firms that are scrappers. They're scrapping and they're trying to build a name for themselves. And it's got wear and tear. In staffing agencies, you're either going to get through that first year mark and decide, I want to stick it out for a few more years. And then you got the lifers. You have the ones that drink the Kool-Aid and they stick around for 5, 10, 15 years. They just enjoy staffing agencies in general, and they weather the ups and downs of the market conditions. So staffing agencies can actually, be, I think, one of the most rewarding professions, career tracks that you can get into, because what it does is it builds that foundation and that level of skill that you need to kind of have a long-term career within talent acquisition. Because once you get out of the talent acquisition space, you can maneuver in all these other different career tracks that we're going to talk about as well. Okay, so the next career track that we're going to cover here is going to be corporate businesses, corporate America, right? So it can be small, mid, or large size companies. So there's usually sort of a natural transgression that happens. If you're a recruiter that decides to go down the agency staffing firm track, you put in your time there, and then eventually you say, you know what, I want to go make some more money. I'm tired of working on a base and commission only, and I'm going to go ahead and go and receive a permanent salary, right? That's what everybody works for. Everybody wants to go to corporate America and especially if you go to corporate America and you land yourself in one of these big, high-tech, reputable companies, because at that point, you don't have to hustle. A lot of times you get a lot of applicants, a lot of candidates that are knocking down the door just to even be part of the organization. So corporate America, being a corporate recruiter, has a lot of benefits behind it. Number one, you actually get a good benefit structure package usually. Whether you're small, mid, or large size company, it's going to vary. But this is kind of like starting to go into a country club environment where in a staffing agency firm, you're grinding, you're working 10, 12-hour days. When you go to corporate America, you start to clock in and clock out. Now, again, in the next episode, we're going to talk about the different roles within recruiting, and we're going to specifically talk about the different roles that you may have within corporate America. But it's going to vary. And so typically there's going to be a few different scenarios here. And I think the biggest thing here about being a corporate recruiter is that you have a very solid infrastructure. And again, I wanted to preface this by saying it's going to vary from a small organization. And when I say small business, it could be under $20 million worth of revenue versus a mid-size, which is going to be 500 million plus range. And then a large is going to be $1 billion type of company. That's what we're talking about. You can be working at a corporate America where you have maybe 20 recruiters, 50 recruiters. You can have a couple of hundred recruiters or even thousands of recruiters in some of the large firms out there. And so the Amazons of the world have done that. You know, the high-tech companies went out and hired a bunch of recruiters. And the pitfall behind all of it is if there's a downturn in the marketplace, corporate America is the first one that starts slashing budgets. And when they slash budgets and there's no hires to be made, recruiters are the first one to get the pink slip. And we see a lot of that happening, and that's pretty cyclical in our business. But corporate recruiters also, I think, is one of those ones where we kind of tease it. It's kind of like a country club type of environment, right? You're kind of pushing paper, you're kind of working the logistics, you're really kind of taking care of the workflow, the life cycle process from beginning to end. There's a lot of levers to pull, and I think that's probably one of the things that can become hectic about working in a corporate environment is there's so many pieces, there's so many systems, there's so many tools. They're not all integrated, and it can be some high demand as well, especially if you're working in a high volume type of environment. You may have a lot of pressure in making sure that you get your 20, 40, 50, 100 hires per year. But the thing that's nice about corporate America is the structure that comes behind it. And so this kind of really puts you into a scenario, into experiences now to experience really professional corporate America type of establishment. And by this, I mean by the way that meetings are conducted, the ways that revenues and profit margins are reported. You get more insight into other parts of organizations within corporate America. And so whether it's getting insight into the finance accounting team, the contracts team, human resources, a lot of partnerships within the human resources team, you get exposure to C-level executives and leaderships. And so that's what's going to give you an opportunity to really engage and have more insight and try to determine like, hey, I'm in corporate America, but just even within corporate America, you probably have 6 different paths that you can take within corporate America. Whether you want to be a lead recruiter, a principal recruiter, a manager, a director, a vice president, you have a few different options that you can navigate through within corporate America. And there's a lot of corporate recruiters out there. And I think what's one of the great things about it is it gives you a lot of tenure. It gives you a lot of sort of stability and a sense of security and stability that a lot of recruiters are looking for. They're not trying to hustle anymore. And so this is a good place if you don't like the pressure and you don't like taking risks too much and you want to climb up that corporate ladder and you want to be a company person, then I would recommend that corporate path, corporate business recruiting is a good cushion sort of type of career track that you can take. It's one that kind of keeps you safe, but depending on the competitive nature that you have, if you want to kind of excel and earn and optimize your income potential, you're going to have to outpace the other recruiters because now you're competing internally. And so you want to be able to separate yourself from other recruiters out there, whether you want to go down that management track or it's going to be strictly performance track. Now, there are recruiting organizations, companies out there that do incentivize the recruiters, but it's not that often that they do that. It usually is a base salary, and then you get your annual performance review and maybe some spot bonuses throughout the year. That seems to be the norm, but again, it's really is a nice sort of option and a really drastic difference from a staffing agency or staffing firm type of experience. All right, so we've covered staffing firms, staffing agencies, and then we went ahead and gave you an overview on corporate recruiting. And so now we're going to the third career track, which is what's independent recruiting. And so a lot of times that can be construed as becoming an independent contractor. This is a career track that a lot of recruiters do. You'd be surprised what the ratio of a full-time employee at a company is and how many contractors actually work work at some of these larger companies or even small size corporations as well. The only pullback on this is you really can't become an independent contractor or an independent recruiter until you have some sort of experience. And so you're going to gain your experience like I did in staffing firm, staffing agency route, and then maybe you go over to corporate and then you get a little bit more experience. And at that point, you have enough foundation and enough oomph in you, because that's what you really need. You need to have that sort of that ability to want to take some risks. By taking a little bit of risk, what you're doing is you're foregoing the security and stability sort of sense of mind, right? That sense of peace that you have working for a corporation. So immediately your benefits go away, your PTO goes away, your 401k matching goes away, and now you are self-sufficient and you're providing all of these things for you. Now, it's not made out for everybody. For me, I did that for many, many years. I was an independent contract recruiter working for a lot of different organizations. I had my experience in the agency firm route. I had my experience in corporate America working for some of the biggest and best companies in the world. And so then I said, you know what, I have enough experience here where I don't want to make just a basic six-figure salary, which is a lot of times kind of the norm for a lot of recruiters in corporate America. So I wanted to go above beyond that. And so in this particular case, you can actually demand a higher rate. Now, we're going to get into this again in the next episode where we're going to talk about the different roles. We're going to really kind of look back at some of the compensation and how much you're going to get paid. But the big pro for working as an independent recruiter is that you get a little bit more money. You get a little bit of a higher hourly rate, and it gives you a little bit more flexibility with your schedule. A lot of times you get a little bit more leniency on how you want to work your schedule as well. So, and it also frees you up to do potentially other things if you're working one contract vehicle. We know in the industry that there's recruiters that do what we call double dipping, right? They work on multiple different contract vehicles, or they partner and they help out some staffing agencies with perm placements. There's a lot of that going on also in the workforce. But independent recruiting can actually just open you up to kind of start setting you up for what the next career track will be. Because ultimately, your sole responsibility is to still fill jobs. And a lot of times when you're working in corporate America as a contract recruiter, your function is still the same as a FTE, as a full-time employee, a recruiter that's working in that capacity. A lot of times, the only difference is your email alias might be, say, temporary. Now, as an independent or contract recruiter, you are at risk, and you are at risk from day one. It's something that you have to accept. So if you don't have that thick skin that we talk about, and you're not used to the roller coaster ride, then, independent recruiting is not really made out for you. Contract recruiting is saying, you know what? I stand on my own 2 feet. I have developed enough knowledge and enough experience that I feel very confident in my ability to go to any company, any organization, and recruit full life cycle, or source for that matter, and be effective in my job to where I can create value and contribute. Ultimately, contract recruiters essentially try to set themselves up to be an asset to an organization, to be an extension to a company. And so if you do a good enough job in that sense, you can get, some longevity out of there. I was on a contract with one particular company, no joke, for a lot of years. I want to say over 10 years at one time. And they just kept me around, and they kept asking me, hey, Alex, do you want to go full time? And I was like, it's not for me. It's not for me. And I always chose not to go full time because I felt secure in my abilities. And so I went ahead and purchased my own employee, my own insurance plan, my medical, my dental, my vision plan for me, my family, and was able to sustain that. I was able to go ahead and make my own investments, so I can go ahead and do that. So I wasn't really dependent. I mean, the only biggest drawback is you don't get PTO. And so there were many years where if I took time off, I didn't take a week off. I would take long extended weekends. I'd take off Thursday and come back on a Monday or Tuesday. If there was holidays, you don't get paid. So you have to kind of budget properly in order to kind of be a responsible contract recruiter. The other kind of con that comes with it is that you have to manage your own taxes. You have to pay your taxes, and you have to make sure that you're diligent about that. If you're not, it'll catch up to you, and a lot of recruiters do end up getting caught in that scenario where they don't pay their quarterly taxes and the back taxes, and it starts pulling up on that front. So you do have to manage your bookkeeping there, and that is a discipline in itself. So if you're not comfortable with that, then I would recommend that hiring a bookkeeper to sustain your numbers and your books is probably the way to go. But ultimately, what independent contract recruiting does is, again, it gives you the ability to try different things. You might stay with a particular contract for a year, 2 years, 6 months, and then you go dabble in something else. I spent about a 6-month contract with Under Armour and enjoyed it thoroughly. I got an amazing experience out of it. I've also been on some very short-term contracts, 3 months, 6 months long. And so it really kind of depends on what your comfort level is. But again, independent recruiting, contract recruiting is really designed for those recruiters that can pivot immediately. If something happens, if you lose your contract, if something happens to the company, the contractors are the first ones to go. And so by you going, you have to have an established network. You always have to have feelers out there. And independent recruiters, contract recruiters are always setting themselves up. They're always having feelers out there. They're always networking. They're always talking to other recruiters at other companies, and that is highly important if you want to go down this path. So this is going to set us up for the next career track, which is going to be the consulting track. So let's get into that. Okay, so the consulting track is going to be very unique. And so if you're familiar with the talent acquisition industry, typically we think RPO, right? Recruitment Process Outsourcing. These are different functions within an organization that you provide services to, consulting services at that. And I would say it's a little bit different than, say, a staffing firm or a staffing agency where you're making hires and you're putting people on contracts or you're doing direct placements. A consulting firm is going to be a little bit more service oriented. So I was part of a consulting firm, a couple of different consulting firms. I provided independent consulting as well to some of my clients as well. So this could be program management, or it can be strategy focused, or it can be even executive recruitment as well, which in a sense is kind of consulting based as well. Now, the biggest difference between a consultant and a contractor is a contractor, you're working independently, you're filling jobs, you're supporting recruiters, you're on a month-to-month basis, year-to-year basis on a particular contract. As a consultant, you can be hired in as a consultant, and they may still look at you as a contract recruiter, but you are providing a higher level of expertise by coming in. At this point, if you're a consultant that has a higher level of expertise, that means they're expecting you to hit the ground running immediately, and they're expecting for you to contribute at a high level. And that may mean changing processes, making recommendations, right? Taking a look at what's going on within the recruiting team, within the recruiting organization, kind of really develop and roll out best practices, maybe implement new tools and systems. I've been part of clients and organizations where we're rolling in new ATSs or new CRMs or new research or marketing tools. And I've been able to implement those because they don't have that within their existing team. So they need a consultant, a contract recruiter that's a consultant that can come in and roll out some of these initiatives. I love that because it's a little bit more sophisticated, and I think it's a little bit more involved than, say, sourcing, searching for candidates, screening candidates, submitting candidates, setting up the interviews, making offers, and then going on repeat, rinse, and recycle again over and over again, right? I think you can only do that for so many years. And then, as you become good at what you do, consulting could be something that you want to go ahead and test the waters out. And I always enjoy it because that gives me really opportunity to work directly with C-level executives. I loved working with CEOs, COOs, anybody on the C-level side of the house, even, HR directors or vice presidents of human resources, kind of partnering up with them. And especially for small and mid-sized companies, a lot of times small and mid-sized organizations just don't have the maturity infrastructure within an organization, and you might have a small recruiting team, and so they need that consultant to come in. Now, you can come in independently as a consultant, or you can be part of a consulting firm where you're offering these types of different services. And again, I've done that as well. I've come in with a team, and we provide consulting services. And it could be something like, hey, there is no executive briefings enabled in this organization. The recruiting team doesn't even know how to pull reports, how to put data together, how to kind of grab that data, do proper analysis, and then roll out a briefing to, say, a board or a C-level type of audience. Those are going to be highly involved things. Those aren't going to be things that a headhunter recruiter or a corporate recruiter that's a full life cycle recruiter or a contract recruiter is going to be able to do. This is consultative in nature. And I think that's the most important facet of it, is you're consultative in nature. You come in and you add the finesse, the touch, the art of recruiting within an organization. I typically go to organizations and I leave my fingerprint there. I leave my signature line as far as a system, a tool, a process, a workflow, a methodology, right? All of these things. You're constantly building use cases, pitching new ideas. You're contributing to the bottom line. You're looking at, you're actually even responsible for some of the financial budget items that are tied into that. So there is a lot of responsibility in consulting, but again, it gives you a lot more flexibility. It gives you that almost that sense of entrepreneurship as well, because you are operating in a boutique fashion by providing this high level of experience. Love this career track. If this is something that is appealing to you and you feel like, you've kind of evolved as a recruiter and you want to do a little bit more, and maybe the management track isn't quite really what you want to do, consulting is always a good option. And I would recommend it if you have an opportunity where there's a client, potential business opportunity, and you want to try it out for a year or two, I would highly recommend that. You would be amazed by the amount of connections and experience that you're going to get by kind of working in that consultative environment. Also going to one of these consulting services, these RPO companies that come in and they can outsource, companies outsource their entire recruiting departments. And so as a consultant, you're running an in-house recruiting team for a small business, for a mid-sized type of company. So there's a lot of different avenues that you can take in the consulting route. And again, I would just emphasize the level of sophistication and the consultative nature it takes to be part of this particular career track. Okay, so we are in career track number 5 here, and this particular career track is entrepreneurship, and it can actually be business ownership. This is the career track when you finally decide, hey, I've done this. I've been a headhunter, I've been an agency recruiter, I've worked corporate America, I've been an independent contractor, I've done consulting, and I have other opportunities. I have other clients that are now starting to come to me because by this time you're developing a good reputation. You've put your time into the business and you're starting to develop a good reputation overall. When you do that, business starts coming at you. And so when it starts presenting itself to you, you have an option to say, I'm either going to turn that business away, or maybe perhaps I'm going to go ahead and take a leap of faith and start my own company. Now, you can start your own company that can be very small in nature. It can be 1 or 2 or 3 people, and you start delegating, you start breaking up the different pieces of the recruiting life cycle, and you start operating in that capacity, in that function. You can be the face of the client of your particular small business, and then you have the back team and the back office kind of providing providing that support. Or if you're an entrepreneur that decides, you know what, I'm going all in, I'm going to go ahead and get a line of credit, and I'm going to go ahead and do payroll, and I want to start hiring, consultants, contractors, and I want to start placing them at client sites. And I have quite a few friends that have really become highly successful in this space. They have built multi-million-dollar companies, brick and mortar companies, offices up and down the East Coast, national basis, and they've done really successful because they've taken the risk to go ahead and build a solid recruiting firm and organization. So entrepreneurship is an amazing path. It's an amazing path if you have that itch to go ahead and have the ultimate freedom, which is to work independently, to build a brand, to build a service platform, a solution platform that you enjoy and that you love, and that you love people, because ultimately, you will be leading teams. You will be leading recruiters. You will be hiring people that are going to be managing. You're going to be delegating as much as possible. This is truly the spirit of entrepreneurship. It's owning a business. It's operations. What this does, the biggest benefit behind it is that you get a lot more return on this, right? The profit margins that start coming in, this is where you start gaining additional excess income revenue streams that you're never really going to have a chance to receive if you're a agency recruiter, if you're a corporate recruiter for 10 years, or if you're even a contract recruiter who's just living contract to contract, right? Trading time for dollars. If you're a consultant, you might have the capacity to expand on that a little bit and again, become boutique. But entrepreneurship and becoming a business owner really frees you up to go at it. And it's highly competitive. I mean, it's sink or swim. It's survival of the fittest when you're working in this type of environment. So branding and marketing and sales becomes highly important. This is when you really bring in a sales team, because you're going to need people out there drumming the streets, talking to the clients, meeting, establishing relationships, building that rapport, nurturing those long-term relationships to get big deals. And we're not talking about, little measly deals. We're talking hundreds of thousands of dollar deals out there, because ultimately you're talking about building an organization that's going to be in the millions. And I've done that. At one point, my firm that I had had a managing partner, was two partners of us that were involved in this. We had a firm and we had about 80 people that were billing out to our clients. We were making millions of dollars, and I was pretty young actually during this time period of my life. And so, but we were rolling in it, and the freedom and the flexibility that we had as far as all the revenue, all the income, the profits that were coming in, and the things that we could do to invest and buy real estate and investments and things of that nature was very lucrative and very rewarding. So if that's in you, then I would say the entrepreneurship, business ownership is a great track. And especially if you're kind of on the fence and you're thinking about it, then go ahead and extend that hand. Find a partner, find somebody where you can take and can split that risk. It can be one or two partners and go in it on together. When you crunch the numbers in recruiting, when you talk about bill rates that you pay, and then the direct labor rates and the kind of spread or profit margins that you make out of it, it's pretty amazing, because this is how you get residual income. This is how you finally give away your time and you say, you know what, I want my business working for me, and I want to earn money on that, and I want to reward and incentivize people within my organization for doing that type of work as well. So it can be, again, consultative services, it can be staffing agency oriented, it can be RPO specific. So there's a lot of different paths, and it also could be one other thing. It could be a service or product as well. So, and we're going to talk about that in as the final sort of career track. But ultimately, I'm a big proponent. I've enjoyed it. This has been kind of my bread and butter, is in entrepreneurship in my life as a recruiter. I enjoy this part of it, and I continue to push the boundaries when it comes to entrepreneurship and using that, leveraging that as a career track. Okay, we're finally here, the sixth career track, the final career track, and this is a good one. This is actually a product and services career track within talent acquisition, within recruiting. So typically for the people that just elect not to be recruiters, they just don't have it in them. They don't want to do the sourcing, the searching, the screening of candidates, the working with the managers, the hiring, the paperwork, the offers, the negotiating. They don't want to do any of that. typically where they can fall into within this industry, because it's such a large industry, talent acquisition, there are numerous products and services that are out there. There's so many tools. The technology is evolving so quickly, so rapidly right now. There are so many SaaS products that are out there. There's so many different types of services that are coming to the marketplace. Research services. There's chat technology now, especially with ChatGPT. There's AI automative type of tools that are out there. Then you have the traditional things like the CRMs and the ATSs and the job boards. All kinds of different things that are out there as far as tools go. And so if a career track that you're looking for within recruiting is not any of the 5 that we talked about, then you might want to consider jumping on this career track. And it's just really getting yourself behind a product, a service that you really enjoy. It can be a CRM, an applicant tracking system, whatever it may be. There are many people that work within talent acquisition that don't ever really do any kind of recruiting at all. And simply what they're doing is they're providing a service, they're providing a tool. Maybe they're account reps, customer success reps, right? So maybe they're lead generators within an organization. They're talking to recruiters. They're trying to introduce them into some of the tools that they have. And they just really want to share this awesome tool that's going to really help them out. So it becomes a really kind of sales type of nature type of business. But it doesn't stop there, because once the sale happens, you have the account management reps, you have technical support people that are back there. And so there's a lot of moving parts and there's a lot of pieces here. And you're really intimately closed in with the talent acquisition community. What happens though, if you're in this realm, you still got to understand the baseline, the sort of the environment, the culture of what talent acquisition is, because you may come in and start selling a service, like say you're selling anything in the chat technology realm. If you don't know recruiting and kind of the ins and outs of that, you're going to struggle with providing that type of level of service to recruiters, to organizations that are thinking about buying your product, buying your tools, or buying your services. And then even once the product is up and running, you got to be able to provide the type of training that's necessary so that recruiters will, again, continue buying your product year after year. Because there's so many times where it's pretty dreadful. Recruiters just don't really very adaptive when it comes to, acquiring new tools and learning these tools. And so a lot of these tools and technology that's out there can be a little sophisticated, a little clunky, a little too intensive, not very user-friendly. And this is where you, as somebody who's working within that talent acquisition space, within a service or product area, can really offer that type of level of expertise. Now, there's going to be opportunities. We're going to talk again about this in the episode when we talk about the different roles that there are within talent acquisition. But in this particular case, this is a completely different path compared to the other 5 that are out there, but still within the family, still within the talent acquisition family. And I had the privilege of actually developing my own SaaS product. It was a chat technology product that was developed. And there was also a service type of consulting type of product that I also was a part of as well. So both of these required a lot of time, especially when you're talking about software and SaaS and development, and be able to orchestrate that, and the amount of effort that goes into that part of it. And again, I was more on the entrepreneurship side of the house, investment side of the house, versus kind of operations. And I think that's the most important thing, is what side of the house do you want to be at when you're looking at services and products and tools and technology? Do you want to be on the sales side? Do you want to be in the operations, kind of the account management side? That's going to be a big distinction between the two as well. But either way, you're part of talent acquisition, and talent acquisition, again, is the engine that runs the organization, that runs companies. So I hope you enjoy this, the 6 different tracks that we have that are out there that you either were a part of, and maybe you've done, count them on yourself. How many have you done? I'm 6 for 6 on all of them. And so if you're maybe interested in poking around and probing and seeing what's out there, make sure you make some connections within our community and get yourself out there. And if you're thinking about getting into recruiting, you have options available to you. So I wish you the best of luck in that endeavor. Again, stay tuned for the next episode of the 6 career roles within talent acquisition. Remember, top 1% recruiters, we always level up.